Thank you and good afternoon. I'm Suzanne Smith, the director of the NASA Kentucky Space Grant and EPSCoR programs, and with me today is Dr. Janet Lump. She's the associate director of the NASA Kentucky programs. Also on our staff are Mark Pittman, who some of you may have dealt with, who's our financial coordinator for the awards for the NASA Kentucky programs, and Kathy Walford, who's our receptionist and support staff as well. We do have a TBD or TBA to be announced, staff person that will be coordinating communication and the student programs, and so there'll be someone else helping to coordinate programs here just in the future. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today, and I especially appreciate the opportunity to follow Jeff, because the NASA Kentucky programs are really different than the NSF programs in the way that they're run. They're very similar in that this is I want to say workforce development program overall, but it's really at the intersection of NASA's interests and Kentucky's interest as articulated in the science and technology strategy, as well as the emphasis areas in Kentucky, and then of course there's some of those for NASA as well. Our program is a higher education program primarily. It involves student training, that's internships, fellowships, and team projects. It involves faculty development. We have research initiation awards and also infrastructure development through the NASA Kentucky programs. And then there's a building of NASA collaborations. One of the ongoing themes is, because NASA's agency is a mission agency, is to develop researchers that are aligned with solving NASA's problems. They really want to take your talents in the state of Kentucky and get you thinking about the problems that NASA's facing. And so that's really the NASA Kentucky programs. So this is similar to the NSF goals, I think, probably. But what's very different is how we construct and run these programs. And I guess I'll get to that in just a second. I did put this up here as something that just came out recently. The Space Report 2012 by the Space Foundation was just released. We got a copy, I think, a couple weeks ago. And this was one of the tables from page 117 from the Labor Department statistics, and basically looked at the future of U.S. space-related occupations. So now this is not aeronautics, and it's not really defense. This is space, but really talks about the applications of aerospace engineers, technicians, astronomers, and then atmospheric scientists, and the expectation for the job needs in the future. And so this workforce is, what our goal is to develop, along with a complementary workforce that supports civil aviation and aerospace and aeronautics. Okay. So how does the NASA Kentucky programs, or how are our programs very different than the NSF programs? Instead of having track one and having everything coordinated and the kind of activity to come up with a themed proposal that Jeff mentioned, we have separate programs and several different funding streams into the state. We have space grant programs that come to us, and if you want to, you can think of these as primarily education programs for higher education. It's for U.S. citizens. They're for no equipment. The space grant side of the house is research initiation awards, student internships, graduate fellowships, so that's the space grant programs. The EPSCoR programs are the research programs, and so this also includes infrastructure development. Equipment is allowed on some of these. Both of these build collaborations with NASA and partnerships with NASA for working on other NASA missions after these programs initiate things. We did pull out a couple of examples here because, in addition to the things I've just mentioned that maybe you all are familiar with, we do some K through 12 teacher training. It's one of the NASA areas of emphasis. In the year we wrote our space grant proposal a couple of years ago, middle school teacher training. And so one example of that that was here in this year was an experiment-based climate change science instruction for middle and high school science teachers. This is being offered by some researchers. It was proposed they had enough for 20 teachers to sign up. 60 teachers tried to sign up in the first 24 hours, and so that's being expanded, and they're going to run that next month. And climate change is also one of the themes of the NASA areas of emphasis from a couple of years ago. On the research side, on the EPSCoR side, there was a workshop. We do have one of our subprograms is a workshop conference seminar program, and this ablation workshop happened this February. Dr. Alexander Martin coordinated that, and he had, I think, about 60 visitors, some of them international, that came here to Lexington and then discussed ablative materials. And for those of you who aren't familiar with reentry and descent, these are materials that, shed. I can tell you can tell that I'm not as familiar, but these are materials that are especially suited for reentry and descent and high temperature applications. And so we had lots of people come for that, and we partially supported that along with support that came from other sources. So in addition to the things that you may know about the NASA Kentucky programs, there are some other opportunities that it's worth looking at when our calls for proposals come out. Now, here is a story or a presentation of a sequence of opportunities that were realized by Dr. Hulu Karaka at the University of Kentucky Department of Mechanical Engineering. This picture up here is an illustration of a pathways of opportunities, which was in our proposal to NASA a couple of years ago. And we said for students or faculty, this is really what we're trying to create. We want a pathway of opportunities so that you can build a relationship with NASA, a collaboration with NASA researchers, and you can build your potential for research funding. And so he started off with a Research Initiation Award, and then initiated some NASA collaboration. There was an undergraduate scholarship that helped support some of the work he was doing. Another Research Infrastructure Development Award that was on the EPSCoR side that kind of continued this along. And then he was a successful applicant a year and a half ago for one of the largest awards in our portfolio, which is the EPSCoR Research Area Award. This is a national competition. It's a 3-year multi-investigator award. And so the selection is dependent upon the strength of your NASA collaborations. And so this is really the kind of idea of our programs. There are a lot of programs. You really want to build your capacity and your relationship with NASA and then be successful for these awards. NASA's mission directorate definitions have changed. There are a lot of changes that are going on in NASA nationally. Some of these you see in the news about the shuttle program retirement. Others are more organizational. The mission directorates, and it is a mission agency, are now the Science Mission Directorate, the Aeronautics Research Mission Directorate, and the Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate, which formerly included Space Operations and Exploration Systems. In addition to the mission directorates, there is a new, as of a couple of years ago, Office of Chief Technologist. At NASA, there's a chief scientist, and now there's a chief technologist. And the chief technologist office offers a lot of research opportunities as well. Those opportunities don't go through our office, but to be competitive for those opportunities, you can build relationships through the programs that we offer that then in the national competitions make you a successful applicant. So I encourage you to look at the Office of Chief Technologist website and the opportunities there. The NASA Graduate Student Researchers Program Fellowships, which are not called that anymore, a lot of those now have moved under the Office of Chief Technologist, so that's where to look for graduate student fellows. To look for NASA opportunities, you don't go to Fastlane. You go to Inspires, and Inspires is here, and this is what it looks like. You can actually go on Inspires and actually look underneath that at NASA solicitations. You can look at open solicitations, you can look at closed solicitations, and past solicitations, and awards. And so if you ever have a question about, boy, is somebody at NASA doing this? Because it's such a broad agency and there's so many problems that are specific to NASA or that NASA's looking at, you can actually look and see who's been awarded things in the past and what mission directorate that came from or what contacts at what centers. And so that can give you a lot of insight into what's of interest. Now, the large NASA research announcements that come out annually, you may or may not have heard of before. The ROSES announcement comes out every year. It comes out, it solicits basic and applied research in science and the Science Mission Directorate. So, basic astronomy and lots of other science subjects are called for each year in the ROSES announcement. There's also missions of opportunity notice. So these are now, it says here, modest investigations of space flight, but You know, they're looking for certain problems to be solved, and so that really affects science as well as the human explorations and Office of Chief Technologist areas. And then there's also research opportunities in aeronautics. And so under each of these, you can look and see what the current emphasis areas are and what the problems of interest are. As far as our NASA Kentucky programs, we have NASA Kentucky EPSCoR, and then we have NASA Kentucky Space Grant, as I mentioned earlier. Our funding opportunities coming soon. We have a travel award opportunity under NASA Kentucky EPSCoR where researchers can go visit NASA centers, and so we'll be releasing that RFP, maybe in about a month, and so you can look for that. In the fall request for proposals, which in the past has been announced in August, there are going to be these research infrastructure development grants and also workshop conference seminar awards. And then there's an annual one, I put question mark, request for pre-proposals for the research area awards, the multi-investigator, multi-year awards. We're still waiting for the release of the 2012 national request. In the past, it's come out usually in November, December, but we haven't gotten it yet, and that may be because of some of the changes that are happening nationally at NASA. So this in the past has been an annual request for proposals at the national level, so pre-proposals at the state level, but so far we have the pre-proposals submitted, have been reviewed, and we're holding them until the national one comes out, but hopefully there will be another one following this. As far as space grant funding, there are fall requests for proposals to support students and faculty, and also the teacher training and things like that will also come out around the August timeframe. And I'll be glad to answer any questions at the question period, either across the hall when we're going to talk more about specific awards in year 2 and some of the things that are going on, or when we're all finished talking now.